Hello, wonderful sixth grade students. Even though I am caught in a snowstorm, stuck here in Montana, I did not want to finish Percy Jackson without you guys. So, yesterday, we should have finished, or you guys should have finished chapter 21. I know I did yesterday before I went to bed. Today, chapter 22, the very last chapter. And I wanted to be a part of this with you, even though I can't be there today. So, here goes nothing. Chapter 22. The prophecy comes true. We were the first heroes to return alive to Half-Blood Hill since Luke, so of course everyone treated us as if we'd won some reality TV contest. According to camp tradition, we wore laurel wreaths to a big feast prepared in our honor that led a procession down to the bonfire, where we got to burn the burial shrouds our cabins had made for us in our absence. Annabeth's shroud was so beautiful, gray silk with embroidered owls. I told her it seemed like a shame not to bury her in it. She punched me and told me to shut up. Being the son of Poseidon, I didn't have any cabin mates, so the Ares cabin had volunteered to make my shroud. They'd taken an old bed sheet and painted smiley faces with X'd out eyes around the border, and the word loser painted really big in the middle. It was fun to burn. As Apollo's cabin led the sing-along and passed out s'mores, I was surrounded by my old Hermes cabin mates, Annabeth's friends from Athena, and Grover's satyr buddies, who were admiring the brand-new searcher license he'd received from the Council of Cloven Elders. The council had called Grover's performance on the quest brave to the point of indigestion, horns and whiskers above anything we had seen in the past. The only ones not in a party mood were Clarice and her cabin mates, whose poisonous looks told me they'd never forgive me for their disgracing their dad. That was okay with me. Even Dionysus' welcome home speech wasn't enough to dampen my spirits. Yes, yes, so the little brat didn't get himself killed, and now we'll have an even bigger head. Well, huzzah for that. In other announcements, there will be no canoe races this Saturday. I moved back into cabin 3, but it didn't feel so lonely anymore. I had my friends to train with during the day, and at night I lay awake and listened to the sea, knowing my father was out there. Maybe he wasn't quite sure about me yet, maybe he hadn't even wanted me born, but he was watching, and so far he was proud of what I've done. As for my mother, she had a chance at a new life. Her letter arrived a week after I got back to camp. She told me Gabe had left mysteriously, disappeared off the face of the planet, in fact. She'd reported him missing to the police, but she had a funny feeling they would never find him. On a completely unrelated subject, she sold her first life-size concrete sculpture, entitled The Poker Player, to a collector, though an art gallery in Soho through an art gallery in Soho. She'd gotten so much money for it, she put a deposit down on a new apartment and made a payment on her first semester's tuition at NYU. The Soho Gallery was clamoring for more of her work, which they called a huge step forward in super ugly neo-realism. And after reading that section, I think we're all pretty sure what happened to Gabe. But don't worry, my mom wrote. I'm done with sculpture. I've disposed of that box of tools you left me. It's time for me to take a turn at writing. At the bottom, she wrote a P.S. Percy, I found a good private school here in the city. I've put a deposit down to hold you a spot in case you want to enroll for 7th grade. You could live at home, but if you want to go year-round at Half-Blood Hill, I'll understand. I folded the note carefully and set it on my bedside table, and every night before I went to sleep I read it again, and I tried to decide how to answer. On the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for a fireworks display by the cabin 9. Being Hephaestus's kids, they weren't going to settle for a few lame red, white, and blue explosions. They anchored a barge offshore and loaded it with rockets the size of Patriot missiles. According to Annabeth, who'd seen the show before, the blasts would be sequenced so tightly they'd look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 100-foot-tall Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean, fight a battle, then explode into a million colors. As Annabeth and I were spreading a picnic blanket, Grover showed up to tell us goodbye. He was dressed in his usual jeans and t-shirt and sneakers, but in the last few weeks he'd started to look older, almost high school age. His goatee had gotten thicker, and he'd put on some weight. His horns had grown at least an inch, so he now had to wear his rasta cap all the time to pass as a human. "I'm off," he said. "I just came to say, well, you know." I tried to feel happy for him. After all, it wasn't every day a satyr got permission to go look for the great god Pan. But it was hard saying goodbye. I'd only known Grover a year, and yet he was my oldest friend. Annabeth gave him a hug. She told him to keep his fake feet on. I asked him where he was going to search first. "Kind of a secret," he said, looking embarrassed. "I wish you could come with me, guys. But humans and Pan—" "We understand," Annabeth said. "You got enough tin cans for the trip?" "Yeah." "And you remembered your reed pipes?" "Geez, Annabeth," he grumbled. "You're like an old mama goat." But he didn't really sound annoyed. He gripped his walking stick and slung a backpack over his shoulder. He looked like a hitchhiker you might see on an American highway, nothing like the little runty boy I used to defend from bullies at Yancey Academy. "Well," he said, "wish me luck." He gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and headed back through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life overhead. Hercules carrying the Nemean lion, Artemis chasing the boar, George Washington, who by the way was the son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. "Hey, Grover," I called. He turned at the edge of the woods. "Wherever you're going, I hope they make good enchiladas." Grover grinned, and then he was gone, the trees closing around him. "We'll see him again," Annabeth said. I tried to believe it, the fact that no searcher had ever come back in 2,000 years. Well, I decided not to think about that. Grover would be the first. He had to be. Then July passed. I spent my days devising new strategies for Capture the Flag and making alliances with other cabins to keep the banner out of Ares' hands. I got to the top of the climbing wall for the first time without getting scorched by lava. From time to time, I'd walk past the big house, glance up the attic windows, and think about the oracle. I tried to convince myself that its prophecy had come to completion. "You shall go west and face the god who has turned." Been there, done that, even though the traitor god had turned out to be Ares rather than Hades. "You shall find what was stolen and see it safe returned." Check. One master bolt delivered, one helm of darkness back on Hades' oily head. "You shall be betrayed by the one who calls you a friend." This line still bothered me. Ares had pretended to be my friend and then betrayed me. That must be what the oracle meant. "And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end." I had failed to save my mom, but only because I'd let her save herself, and I knew that was the right thing. So why was I still uneasy? The last night of the summer session came all too quickly. The campers had one last meal together. We burned part of our dinner for the gods. At the bonfire, the senior counselors awarded the end of summer beads. I just got my leather necklace when I saw the bead for my first summer. I was glad firelight covered my blushing. The design was pitch black with a sea green trident shimmering in the center. "The choice was unanimous," Luke announced. "This bead commemorates the first son of the sea god at camp, and the quest he undertook into the darkest part of the world to stop a war." The entire camp got to their feet and cheered. Even Ares' cabin felt obliged to stand. Athena's cabin steered Annabeth to the front so that she could share in the applause. I'm not sure I'd ever felt as happy or sad as I did at that moment. I'd finally found a family, people who cared about me and thought I'd done something right. And in the morning, most of them would be leaving for the year. The next morning I found a form letter on my bedside table. I knew Dionysus must have filled it out, because he stubbornly insisted on getting my name wrong. Dear Peter Johnson, if you intend to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round, you must inform the big house by noon today. If you do not announce your intentions, we will assume you have vacated your cabin or died a horrible death. Cleaning harpies will begin work at sundown. They will be authorized to eat any unregistered campers. All personal articles left behind will be incinerated in the lava pit. Have a nice day, Mr. D. Camp Director, Olympian Council, number 12. That's another thing about ADHD. Deadlines just aren't real to me until I'm staring one in the face. Summer was over and I still hadn't answered my mother or the camp about whether I'd be staying. Now I had only a few hours to decide. The decision should have been easy. I mean, 9 months of hero training or 9 months of sitting in the classroom? Duh. But there was my mom to consider. For the first time, I had a chance to live with her for a whole year without Gabe. I had a chance to be at home and knock around the city in my free time. I remembered that Annabeth had said so long ago on our quest, the real world is where the monsters are. That's where you learn whether you're any good or not. I thought about the fate of Talia, daughter of Zeus. I wondered how many monsters would attack me if I left Half-Blood Hill. If I stayed in one place for a whole school year without Chiron or my friends around to help me, would my mother and I even survive until the next summer? That was assuming the spelling tests and 5-paragraph essays didn't kill me. I bet you guys can kind of relate with those 5-paragraph essays, right? I decided I'd go down to the arena and do some sword practice. Maybe that could clear my head. The campgrounds were mostly deserted, shimmering in the August heat. All the campers were in cabins, packing up or running around with brooms and mops, getting ready for the final inspection. Argus was helping some of the Aphrodite kids and their Gucci suitcases and makeup kits over the hill, where the camp shuttle bus would be waiting to take them to the airport. Don't think about leaving yet, I told myself. Just train. I've got to go to the sword fighters arena and found that Luke had the same idea. His gym bag was plopped at the edge of the stage, and he was working solo, wailing on battle dummies with a sword I'd never seen before. It must have been a regular steel blade, because he was slashing the dummies, heads right off, stabbing through the stuffed guts. His orange counselor shirt was dripping with sweat. His expression was so intense, his life might have really been in danger. I watched fascinated as he disemboweled the whole row of dummies, hacking off limbs and basically reducing them to a pile of straw and armor.